Schedule. So Dallas, you give me. Jamie, can you hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
I couldn't hear his response.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And Miss Judy, can you hear me okay? Miss Wendy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great audio. Miss Judy, can you hear me? Thank you. And Jamie, you can still hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are we recording, Dallas? All right. Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another edition of hybrid meetings here at City Hall. I'd like to begin with an approval of the agenda, which I have no additions or changes to. Does anyone on the dais have any additions or changes to the agenda as it was published? Okay, seeing none, I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman, a second from Commissioner Martin. Any questions or comments from the dais on the agenda? If not, Dallas, if you'll put our phone number up. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the beginning of our regularly scheduled commission meeting. We have a motion on the floor properly seconded to approve the agenda as it was published with no additions or modifications to it. Once again, we have about a 30-second delay between our live feed and the YouTube feed. So if you'd like to call in, you think something should be on the agenda that's not there, that would be now would be the appropriate time to make that comment. All you need to do is dial the phone number that you see on the screen. Once we have you in the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol and it'll let us know that you'd like to make a comment, again, about the agenda. And we'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. By my clock, that's about 30 seconds. Dallas, do we have anyone with their hand raised? Okay, will not. And we have everyone here at live. So all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. I'd like to invite Joy Glanzer, Pastor Glanzer, to the podium to give tonight's invocation. If you would please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. That will immediately follow. Welcome, Pastor Glanzer. Is it Pastor Glanzer, Minister Glanzer?
Reverend.
Reverend. I would get there eventually.
I don't, Pastor.
Thank you.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, on this last meeting in a year which has brought challenges to our families, our communities, and our nation, we're grateful we still have the foundation of your love to stand on. We've been brought to our knees with the fallout from the virus. Our friends and loved ones have suffered loss of jobs, income, and even the lives of their neighbors. But we're so thankful for our city who stepped up and provided services beyond their normal boundaries, listened to citizens who needed help, and brought joy during this Christmas season through special events. Lord, we pray tonight that you bless this board with wisdom and the courage to make the hard decisions. It's not easy to serve. For their willingness to do so, we are grateful. And bless the staff, Lord, who works behind the scenes to make our city run so smoothly. And bless our citizens for their charity, generosity, and their faith. May our community blossom as the new year gives way to new hope and health. And above all, praise be to God. In thy precious name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Glanzer. Okay, we have one presentation from our manager tonight, giving us a COVID-19 update. Mr. New, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce to the commission Paul Myers, who is the administrator for the Alachua County Department of Health. He's going to join us online and provide a presentation to the commission. I think it's kind of a standard presentation. I've been in a number of meetings with Paul since the pandemic, the onset of the pandemic back in maybe February or March. He truly possesses expertise in this area and has also very level-headed in terms of his measure about how he goes about his business. We've partnered with Department of Health for a number of COVID testing events in Newberry. I think we just completed our third one last week. So he's been very helpful in getting us information that would help us as a community get word to our residents. And so just wanted to introduce him, and I believe he's going to take you through a brief presentation of where we stand as a community with regards to coronavirus.
Thank you, Mike. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, appreciate you having me this evening. I trust you can hear me okay? Good. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. I have a brief presentation for you. As Mike had said, we've been working with the city of Newberry since the outset of this pandemic. So I have basically a standard presentation tonight, but I do have some slides that are Newberry specific. So here's where we stand as of close of business today. In Alachua County, we have over 14,000 confirmed cases. We've tested over 133,000 people in Alachua County. Over 288,000 tests performed in the county. And unfortunately, we've had 675 residents hospitalized and 108 deaths of Alachua County residents so far this year. Over the last 2 weeks, we've processed over 24,000 tests. We've identified over 1,200 individuals. We've isolated those individuals and quarantined their contacts. About a 5% positivity rate. And over the last 2 weeks, we have verified 6 deaths. Now, that does not mean that the deaths occurred over the last 2 weeks, but rather that they have been verified by the department. Just to give you a little comparison for the state of Florida, we've been faring very well in comparison with the rest of the state in terms of year-to-date positivity, which is the top there, 14-day positivity. We're still doing much better than the state. Our hospitalization rate, again, lower than the state. And this is really what I focus on here is the total death rate. In Alachua County, there's 2 things that I attribute this to. Number one, we have the highest percentage of 15 to 24-year-olds as a percentage of the population of our county as compared to the rest of the state. And so we have a very young county, relatively speaking. And as you all know, this disease doesn't really impact young people as severely as it impacts the elderly. And so that's one issue. But the other thing that I attribute our lower death rate to is the early protective actions that we took in our long-term care facilities. We were in there before it became a mandate to test the staff and the residents to try and identify cases and to institute disease intervention strategies in those facilities. And, you know, to date, we've done a very good job in Alachua County with that. So in terms of our long-term care facilities, this demonstrates what I just said. We have less than the percentage as the rest of the state in terms of cases from our long-term care facilities. Our deaths from long-term care facilities right now, we stand at 36 out of 108 deaths in the county are attributed to our long-term care facilities. A death rate by cases, again, about half of what the state is. And then that last one right there, the long-term care death rate by population, you know, we have about 2,000 of our residents that are in long-term care facilities in Alachua County, and we've protected them much better than the rest of the state has. And so, again, my priority here at the health department has been to focus our energies on those who are most vulnerable. And I think that, relatively speaking, we have done a good job at that. Here's our basic case curve. You can see that we had that spike in the middle of September. And ever since then, it's been this roller coaster ride. You know, we've been experiencing about 75 to 125 cases per day in the county. And again, you know, most of those cases before the Thanksgiving break were in college students, the 18 to 24-year-olds, but they didn't come back after Thanksgiving. And so over the last 2 weeks or so, the median age in Alachua County of our cases has been individuals in their mid-30s. And that's not surprising. Done a lot of testing in Alachua County. We figured this out very early on how to get this done. And so in an environment of increased testing, you can see those blue bars there by month, but our percent positive over the last several months since September has decreased, and that's a good thing. Another metric that we have a very close eye on is our hospital data. Now, these are not all Alachua County residents. That gray line on top is the number of individuals that have been hospitalized with COVID. At the peak of this pandemic, we had about 160 people hospitalized in Alachua County with COVID. And as of today, we're down to about 113. So again, we keep a very close eye on this because this is why we flatten the curve. I mean, you've heard that ad nauseum over the last 10, 11 months, we got to flatten the curve. And the reason why we flatten the curve is to protect our hospital system. In Alachua County, we've done a good job at doing that. Just to put this into further perspective, between North Florida and UF Health, Shands were licensed for over 1,600 beds. And so when you see that we have, as of today, 113 beds occupied with COVID patients, you can see that we're at about a tenth of what our capacity is. So again, nowhere close to crisis care. And of course, crisis care is when doctors and physicians are making medical decisions, not based upon medicine, but rather on a lack of resources. And we've never hit that here in Alachua County. I don't anticipate that we ever will. So here's some slides on Newberry specific. Again, over 14,000 cases confirmed in Alachua County. And in Newberry, we've had 603 cases of Newberry residents. That's about 10%, a little less than 10% of the population of Newberry, which is about 6,100, give or take, residents of the city of Newberry. So again, 10% is not an insignificant number, but it is what it is. In terms of the percentage of Alachua County cases,
Mr. Myers, can you go back one slide there? I just have a question. Is your numbers for cases in Newberry by zip code, or are they by the core of Newberry?
Yeah, it's not just the core of Newberry. Of course, when you take a look at Newberry, the city limits are extend way beyond the core of Newberry. So this is the city limits of Newberry.
This is by zip code?
Yes, if that coincides with the city limits, yes.
It doesn't coincide with the city limits. That's why that's my curiosity, because the Newberry zip code includes Jonesville and part of Gilchrist County. So if these numbers are generated by zip code, that changes your percentage quite a bit. I just want to be clear.
No, I understand what you're saying. And what I tasked our data managers to do was to take a look at your city limits and try and exclude those areas. So it's not just zip code, it's census tracts. We try to get as specific as possible.
So this is by city limit.
That is what I tasked our team to do. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So in terms of what Newberry is contributing to the disease burden in Alachua County, it really hasn't changed since the beginning of this in March, when the denominator was very low. You can see that about 4%, give or take, has been coming from Newberry. Cases per capita, this is cases per thousand. You can see where Newberry stacks up to Gainesville, Alachua, High Springs, Archer, and Hawthorne. Not too surprising there. In terms of the cases by population, Newberry is about 2.25% of Alachua County's population, and it accounts for about 4% or so of the total cases. But of course, Gainesville is leading the charge there. The city of Alachua certainly has contributed, and all the municipalities has contributed. And the reason why I include this slide is that the outlying municipalities have not been spared. Our rural communities are seeing the effects of this as well. So just pivoting a little bit towards vaccine, and I can tell you that our planners have been in contact with your essential workers, the folks at your utility departments and your fire department. As you had mentioned, we've had 3 clinics out there, and we have a good relationship with the city of Newberry. And as soon as that vaccine becomes available for essential workers, we're certainly going to be ensuring that the city of Newberry's essential workers, your utility workers, your fire department, and others are getting this vaccine as soon as we can get it. So just a thing about this vaccine, it does not give you COVID-19. This is a very safe vaccine. Some individuals are going to report that they may experience a low-grade fever, they may experience some chills, but that's your body's immune response. And it's the same thing with the flu vaccine. I hear all the time that, well, I'm not going to get a flu shot because I don't want to get the flu. It doesn't give you the flu. It's your body's response, and that's a good thing, that your body is responding in a way that is going to protect you from getting infected by this pathogen. So key considerations, again, as soon as we get the vaccine here, and today was a very exciting day in the state of Florida. We had 5 hospitals throughout the state system that received vaccine shipments, UF Health Jax, the Adventist Hospital in Orlando, Broward Memorial, Tampa General, and then Jackson Memorial down in Miami will be getting some vaccine shipped to them tomorrow. So it's a great day in our country for this. I think that the current administration should be it's incredible the speed at which this vaccine was developed and is now available to the American people. It's just absolutely unprecedented. In less than a year, when typically vaccine creation and approval takes, 3 to 5 years, this has been an absolutely incredible job that the current administration has done. So here's just real quick the phases of vaccine distribution. Healthcare workers and first responders will certainly be first in line. They've been on the front lines of this battle since January and February. High-risk individuals and those in our long-term care facilities will be next. They're the ones who have suffered the most severe disease. And this is where we're going to get into the essential workers out in the city of Newberry. The folks who are keeping the electricity on, the wastewater and the water running. These are the individuals who we've already been planning to get the vaccine into. And that's probably a month or so out. I certainly don't want to give a timeline that I can't back up, just because, right now it's such a fluid situation with trying to get just a phase 1 and phase 1B going. But I can assure you that once we get the vaccine here at the Alachua County Health Department and we get into phase 2, the city of Newberry, and of course all the municipalities and their essential workers will be in line to get this. And then workers in general settings, children and young adults certainly probably last, and then any remaining unvaccinated population. Right now, this vaccine is only indicated for those who are 16 years and older. But again, we're going to stratify the risk and get those who are at most risk vaccinated against this disease. So again, I just want to reassure the public that this vaccine will not give you COVID-19. That's just a myth that's out there. I include some slides on schools just to show you where most of the cases in our schools are, and they're in the high schools. The older you get, the more you start behaving like an adult. We don't see a whole lot of cases in our elementary school and middle schools, but once we get into the high schools, we do, and Newberry High School is no exception. This is mostly an outbreak in a sports team. You can see where Newberry High School stacks up. Not a whole lot different from Buchholz and Gainesville High School. And Santa Fe High School, of course, with much less. But elementary school out in Newberry, you have 5 cases. In Oakview Middle School, you have 10 cases. So Newberry is behaving much like the rest of the county in that respect. Here's just a breakdown by age, again, just to give you a little bit more perspective and in terms of where we have to focus our energies. And I put this slide in here because a lot of individuals don't want to cooperate with our contact tracers. And the reason why it's important that we test and it's important that we contact trace is that's how we can slow down the spread of COVID-19. And again, we slow down that spread to protect our hospital system. And this is what we get from a lot of the investigations that we're doing. We know that most of the transmissions is occurring in households, family and holiday gatherings. We're starting to see the impact of Thanksgiving, bars and crowded indoor spaces. I would avoid those environments if you are at higher risk for disease, and private parties. Again, if you live with somebody or work with somebody who is elderly and has underlying health conditions, you should probably consider not participating in some of these events. If you do have a case in your home, this is a disease of distance. Try and stay at least 6 feet away. I know that's very difficult with household members, especially if you have little kids. Wash your hands. It's not just for COVID-19, but now we're in flu season right now. The whole mask issue, I'm not going to get into that. There is studies that show the efficacy of masks, but they're certainly not the silver bullet. It depends on what kind of mask you're talking about and how you wear it. Are you wearing it properly? And are you wearing it in those environments where it's most protective? And again, here are just some other strategies that we all can take to try and stop the spread of this disease. In the bottom right, again, once the vaccine becomes available, I would encourage everybody to get it. So that's it, Mr. Mayor. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them for you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. We appreciate the presentation. Does the board have any questions? Hearing none, we appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
All right, that will take us to public announcements. So Dallas, if you would please put our phone number up. Ladies and gentlemen, we have made it to public announcements on tonight's published agenda. Your commission values your participation. They want to hear from you. So they set aside time at the very beginning of the meeting early on to give you the opportunity to come to them with anything on your mind. These are 2-minute announcements, so they're intended to be more of the non-controversial sort. If you have a more controversial comment that you would like to bring up. You'll have a longer period of time at the end of the meeting. If you are calling in, all you need to do is dial the phone number you have on your screen. We'll get you into the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, you'll see a little hand symbol at the bottom of your screen. Simply click that hand symbol and we'll know that you'd like to address the board. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. Let's begin with live comment and then we'll go to virtual comments. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm Joy Glanzer with the Newberry Main Street Organization, and I have lots of good things to report. There have been a lot of positive things this month. Hopefully you've seen the lights that have been strung along the historic buildings downtown and have complemented the beautiful decorations that the city has done. And I want to thank Manager New for your vision on that. It took a while, but you know, some things take a while. Oh, and I want to give a shout out to Jordan Fairfield. He was the one that strung them up for us. So he did a great job. The shop local promotion has been extended and the dollar amount has been reduced to $50. We want to encourage downtown shopping. We don't care how much you spend, just come on down. And if you text your picture of your receipts to shopnewberry@gmail.com, sometime around the first of the year, we're going to have beautiful gift baskets. We've extended it beyond Christmas because there's so much going on. We just want people to come down and shop, come downtown. And so many of our businesses have donated gift baskets and cards as prizes. And last but not least, this is the most exciting thing. We're going to be resuming the farmers market after the first of the year. You know, after the success that Joel Searby had with his Christmas market downtown a couple weeks ago, we are engaging him to manage our farmers market. So based on his success, we're hoping to kick it up a notch and have this farmers market really be a wonderful thing in 2021. It's a good thing to have something to look forward to next year. We thank you for your confidence and your support in the Newberry Main Street Organization, and we wish you a very Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The art show opening on the night of the Christmas tree lighting was great. Wonderful. I appreciate you guys aligning those. It really made a vibrant downtown. There were folks walking all over the place having a great time. So wonderful. Do you have any other live public comments? Hearing none, do we have any virtual public comments?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Marlon Day has a comment.
All right, Mr. Day, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, appreciate your time tonight. I am Marlon Day with the Newberry Ranch Library, the Washington County Library District. I'd like to remind you that the library is open for curbside pickup every day, Monday through Saturday, from 10 a.m. until 5 p.m. And we're also open for browsing from 2 p.m. until 5 p.m. Each day. We have a number of virtual programs that are going on our e-branch, including some live children's story time. We'd encourage everybody to check that out, and you can find that information at www.aclib.us. And that's all I have tonight. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Day. We appreciate that. And Merry Christmas. Do we have any other virtual comments?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, sir. That will close public announcements. We'll go to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve of the consent agenda as it was published? I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Clark. We'll just say it that way. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And that's going to take us to public hearings and ordinances. We have a second reading of ordinance 2020-23. Scott, do you want to read that in and then we'll hear from Jamie?
Happy to do so, Mr. Mayor. Ordinance number 2020-23, an ordinance pertaining to utilities within the city of Newberry, amending Division 2 and Division 3 of Article 6, Chapter 98 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Newberry pertaining to water system development charges and sewer system development charges, repealing all ordinances in conflict and providing an effective date. Mr. Mayor, the appropriate measure is to pass ordinance number 2020-23 as read by title only.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
Yes,
Sorry,
sir.
I'm used to looking for you in the little square on the screen now. I'm forgetting to look up and look for you live in living color. So, Jamie, do you have anything you wanted else? We know it's the second reading. You want to give the commission a reminder of what we have in front of us?
As this is the fourth time you've seen it, and hopefully the last time you will see it, it basically just changes the way your development fees are calculated for water and wastewater and simplifies the process where it's based on meter size requested. The commission has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, James. Does the commission have any questions for your staff? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Martin. Are there any questions from the dais on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, Dallas, if you'll put our telephone number up. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to item 4 on tonight's published agenda. It's second reading of ordinance 2020-23. It is a second reading of this, so we've gone over this ordinance with a fine tooth comb. If you have something that you think we have missed about ordinance 2020-23, we do have a motion probably second on the floor. Now would be the time to call in. All you need to do to accomplish that is dial the phone number on your screen. When we have you in the meeting, you'll look for a little hand symbol at the bottom of your screen. Simply click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. Dallas, do we have anybody virtually with their hand raised? Okay, we'll come back to the dais. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And that will take us to item 5, which is a quasi judicial. Now we have 6, is that right? I've lost count after like 6 or 7. So we have a lot of quasi judicials on tonight's agenda. We are going to move through these after I read the procedures. And Dallas, as long as no one new enters the meeting, then we will not go through the procedures. We'll move from one quasi judicial to the next. We will ask for ex parte at every quasi judicial, but we will hopefully get everyone sworn in at the beginning. And of course, with each quasi judicial, we'll have the attorney read the ordinance or resolution into the record for us. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and read our quasi judicial procedures. Remember, folks, that when this board sits in quasi judicial, they cease being a legislative body and they begin being a judicial body, which means that they can only listen to the evidence presented to them by experts. So in a second, I'm going to ask the attorney to read the ordinance into the record, and then I'm going to explain the rules of concerning testimony, which I just alluded to, is primarily that substantial and competent evidence must be met when the board makes a decision, and it shall state the following, and I quote, all public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence, and the giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. Mr. Attorney, are you ready to read the ordinance, or should we do?
Yes, sir. I'm happy to do that.
Will you go ahead and please do that now?
Yes, sir. This is ordinance number 2020-32, CPA 20-03, an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment of the future land use plan map of the city of Newberry comprehensive plan of 10 or less acres of land under the small scale development amendment procedures established under the small scale amendment provisions of section 163.3187 of the Florida statutes as amended, providing for a change in land use classification from Alachua County rural/agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres to the city of Newberry agricultural less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida. Parcel number 01816-001-000, consisting of approximately 9.64 contiguous acres, providing for severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2020-32 upon its reading by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, sir.
In a moment, I'm going to ask the clerk to swear everybody in, but let's go ahead and do ex parte. So if any commissioner has anything they need to discuss with the attorney or get onto the record, now would be the time to do it. Commissioner Norfleet, Commissioner Coleman, Commissioner Farnsworth, Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Clark. Wonderful. Miss Judy, in a second, will you please swear everybody in? The way we swear folks in on a hybrid meeting, folks, is please click that hand symbol to let us know that you need to be sworn in. Miss Judy is going to read the oath one time, and then we're going to go around and you're going to, with your right hand up, say your name and that you do, right? So I would say, my name is George Marlowe and I do so swear. And then we'll make sure that we have everybody in. So if you could click that now, and Wendy will use you as a guinea pig, because I'm sure you're going to have something to say. Madam Clerk.
Do you hereby swear affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
You
I
have
do.
one.
And that was Wendy. Do we have,
Yes.
Dallas, do we have anyone with their hand raised? No? Brian, are you not intending to speak on these? Okay, wonderful. All right, here's the presentation order that we're going to follow with all the quasi judicials tonight. We will begin with a staff overview. If the applicant is present, we will have an applicant application with no time limit, a presentation with no time limit. Then we'll hear the staff report and recommendation, also with no time limit. I have not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim third-party intervener status, so that's going to take us to public comment. Any member of the public wishing to speak on this ordinance will be given 3 minutes to do so. And then the applicant will be given the opportunity to cross-examine. The staff will be given the opportunity to cross-examine. And then members of the decision-making body through the chair will ask questions of the staff, applicant, or any participant. Then we will hear final arguments from the applicant and the staff related solely to the evidence and testimony presented at the hearing. Then the city attorney will advise the decision-making bodies of applicable law and the factual findings that must be made to approve or deny the application. Then the board will deliberate the application. After deliberations, the vote will be taken to approve, approval conditions, continue, or deny the application. We're going to use the same procedure for every quasi-judicial, and we will begin at this point with the staff overview. Wendy, go right ahead. Do we have an applicant present, Wendy, for any of these?
I am unaware of them attending this one.
Then you feel free to go right into your report and recommendation.
All right. I'd like to just share the screen. So this application is ordinance 2020-32, and it's a comprehensive plan amendment. This is a small scale plan amendment. Originally, the property was annexed into the city on November 9th after 2 readings of the ordinance. Future land use map amendment is the item that you're hearing tonight. It's called a small scale amendment because it's 10 acres or under. This is your first reading. You will have a second reading at which you can adopt the ordinance. The next step will be rezoning, and that will be later on in the meeting. A small scale plan amendment, as I said, it's a change to the future land use map. It's site specific. There aren't any text changes unless it's directly related and they're adopted at the same time. Has to maintain internal consistency with the comprehensive plan. And if challenged within 30 days after adoption, it would not be effective and have to wait for the state to issue its final order that it's the adopted amendment is in compliance. Otherwise, it is effective 31 days after adoption. This is property that's located in the northern part of the city. The application is 9.64 acres. You can see that it's located on the east side of State Road 45, south of Northwest 62nd Avenue. The Planning and Zoning Board met on December 7th and recommends to the City Commission approval of the ordinance. And the recommended action is approval of ordinance 2020-32 for comprehensive plan amendment 20-03 on first reading. And that concludes the staff report and presentation.
Thank you, Miss Wendy. Okay, looking at the wrong sheet of paper. Dallas, would you please put our phone number up? Ladies and gentlemen, we are on our first quasi judicial of the evening. It's item 5 on your published agenda. This is ordinance 2020-32. It's an application City of Newberry to amend the future land use map. If you'd like to call in and comment on ordinance 2020-32, now would be the appropriate time to do so. And all you need to accomplish that is dial the number that's on your screen. Once we get you in the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you have a comment. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to address the board. We'll begin with live comment from the chamber, and then we'll go to virtual comment. Do we have anyone in the chamber who'd like to speak to ordinance 2020-32? Seeing none, we'll go to virtual comment. Dallas, do we have anyone with their hand raised? Seeing none, we will move on. We do not have an applicant present for this one, so there'll be no applicant cross-examination. I'm assuming staff doesn't want to cross-examine themselves, so we'll move to the members of the decision-making body who can ask questions of the staff. Does any board member have any questions about this amendment to the future land use Okay, seeing none. Miss Wendy, do you feel the need to make a final argument?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So the attorney, would you please advise the decision-making body as the applicable law?
It is based upon competent, substantial evidence. That's your decision.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Okay, we'll enter into deliberations. If there are no deliberations, I'll entertain a motion to approve the conditions, continue or deny the application. Okay, I have a motion to approve the ordinance from Commissioner Coleman. I have a second from Commissioner Norfleet. Are there any questions or comments on the motion on the floor from the dais? Hearing none, Dallas, if you'll put our phone number up. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our first quasi judicial. This is ordinance 2020-32. We have a motion properly second on the floor to approve this ordinance. If you'd like to call in and make a comment, now would be the appropriate time to do so. All you need to do to accomplish that is dial the phone number on your screen. Once we get you into the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol. Let us know you'd like to make a comment. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We'll begin with live comment in the chamber, and then we'll move to virtual comment. Do we have anyone live in the chamber who'd like to comment on the motion on the floor? Seeing none. Dallas, do we have anyone with their hand raised? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Dallas, do we have anyone new entered the room since the first quasi judicial? Then we'll begin with Scott. Please read we are on 6. Please read ordinance 2020-34 into the record.
Sir, Mr. Mayor, ordinance number 2020-34, CPA 20-03, an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment of the future land use plan map of the city of Newberry comprehensive plan of 10 or less acres of land under the small scale development amendment procedures established under the small scale amendment provisions of section 163.3187 of the Florida statutes as amended, providing for a change in the future land use classification from Alachua County rural agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres to City of Newberry agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres of certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, parcel number 02568-007-000, consisting of approximately 2.98 acres, contiguous acres within the city, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2020-34 upon its reading by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Let's go ahead and do ex parte. Commissioner Norfleet, do you have anything to disclose? Commissioner Coleman? No. Commissioner Farnsworth? No. Commissioner Martin? No. Commissioner Clark? No. Thank you. And we have already sworn in. We don't have anyone new to swear. So, Ms. Wendy, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. This is item. Bear with me, slideshow. So this application being for another parcel for another small scale plan amendment. This is ordinance 2020-34. Again, to go over these items for the quasi judicial process for this public hearing. It is an annexation that came into the city. This is 2.98 acres. It was approved on November 9th of this year. The future land use map is the item before you now. It's a small scale plan amendment of 10 acres or fewer. The next step will be to rezone it. And this is the process that brings the property into compliance with the city of Newberry's land development regulations. It is a small scale plan amendment, as I said. It's site specific for small scale development activities and no text changes involved. You must maintain consistency within the comprehensive plan. And it is effective within 31 days after adoption if no challenge is filed. And if one is, then it will go on to the state for their review. This is an application for the 2.98 acres. You can see located on the east side of State Road 45, just across from Champions Park. It is the same change from rural agriculture in the county to City of Newberry agriculture. And the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board on December 7th was to recommend to the City Commission approval of ordinance 2020-34 for approving comprehensive plan amendment 2003. The recommended action is to approve the ordinance 2020-34 for CPA 2003.
Thank you, Miss Wendy. Okay, I've not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim third-party intervener status. That's going to take us to public comment on ordinance 2020-34. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to item 6 on tonight's published agenda. It is also a quasi-judicial hearing. If you'd like to call in and make a comment about this ordinance, now is the appropriate time to do so. All you need to accomplish that is dial the phone number on your screen. That will get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, look at the bottom of your screen, you see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol, let us know you'd like to make a comment. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live in the chamber comment, then we'll move to virtual comment. Anyone in the chamber wish to make a public comment? Seeing none. Does anyone virtually need to make a public comment? Seeing none, we will come back to, and once again, we don't have an applicant here to offer the opportunity to cross-examine. Staff doesn't want to cross-examine themselves, so we'll come to the members of the decision-making body. Do you have any questions for staff on this ordinance? Seeing none. Ms. Wendy, you feel the need to make a final argument?
No, Mayor, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney, would you please advise decision-making bodies of applicable law?
Substantial and competent.
Thank you. We've now reached deliberations. If there are no deliberations, we'll entertain a motion to approve. Approval conditions committee are denied. I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Martin. I have a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Does any one on the dais have any questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, Dallas, if you put our phone number up, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our second quasi-judicial meeting. This is ordinance 2020-34. If you'd like to call in and make a comment, we have a motion for approval, probably second on the floor. If you'd like to call in and make a comment, all you need to do is dial the phone number on your screen. That'll get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, look at the bottom of your screen, see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to make a comment. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live comment, and then we'll move to virtual comment. Does anyone live in the chamber like to make a comment on ordinance 2020-34? Seeing none, anyone virtually like to make a comment? Seeing none, we'll come back to the dais. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and that will take us to our next quasi-judicial, which is ordinance 2020-36. And Mr. Attorney?
Yes, sir. It's ordinance number 2020-36, CPA 20-03, an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment of future land use plan map of the city of Newberry, comprehensive plan of 10 or less acres of land under the small scale development amendment procedures established under the small scale amendment provisions of section 163.3187 of the Florida statutes as amended, providing for a change in land use classification from Alachua County rural agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres to the city of Newberry agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres on certain lands within the courtly limits of the city of Newberry, Florida, parcel number 025-19-003-000, consisting of approximately 7.5 contiguous acres, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date, appropriate motion, and appropriate time as to pass ordinance number 2020-36 as read by title only.
Thank you, Scott. Let's go ahead and do, well, first, Dallas, have we have anyone new? Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and do ex parte. Commissioner Norfleet, Commissioner Coleman, Commissioner Farnsworth, Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Clark. Thank you. And we don't have anyone new enter the room to swear in. So Wendy, would you please take it away?
Yes, sir. All right. Go ahead, Dallas, show this one. This is not coming up.
Yes, Dallas.
So this application, again, is another comprehensive plan amendment. The next slide shows you the annexation process. Again, this property was annexed into the city on November 9th of this year. It is a future land use map amendment, small scale. It's 10 acres or under. This property consists of 7.5 acres. The next step on that slide shows you that the rezoning is the next part of the process that you'll hear about later, which implements the comprehensive plan amendment. And the next slide shows you the location. Oh, that's right. Small scale plan amendments, as we said, we're going over this as a part of the quasi judicial hearing process. This is a site specific small scale plan amendment, no text change involved. It must maintain comprehensive plan's internal consistency. It will be effective 31 days after adoption if no challenge is filed, and if one is, the state DEO, Department of Economic Opportunity, would file a final order as to whether it's in compliance. And the next slide shows you the location of the property over on the western part of the city on the county line. The next slide shows you a better and a closer look. This is property that's located north of Southwest 30th Avenue on the east side of Southwest 298th Street. Agriculture zoning is what the city of Newberry is not zoning, future land use, which we're changing it to from the Alachua County Rural Agriculture designation. And the next slide gives you the Planning and Zoning Board's recommendation to the City Commission that recommends approval. And the next slide, the recommended action is to approve ordinance 2020-36, approving CPA 20-03.
Thank you, Ms. Wendy. I've not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim a third-party intervener status. That's going to take us to public comment. So Dallas, if you'll put our telephone number up. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on item 7 of tonight's published agenda. This is ordinance 2020-36. We have come to public comment. If you'd like to call in and make a comment on this ordinance, now is the opportunity to do so. You can accomplish that by dialing the phone number that you see on your screen. Once you're into the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to make a comment. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live comment in the chamber, and then we'll move to virtual comment. Do we have anyone here in the chamber who'd like to speak to this live? Hearing none. Do we have anyone virtually that'd like to speak to this? Seeing none, we're going to come back. Again, we don't have any cross-examination, so it's time for the members of the decision-making body to ask any questions of staff. Do we have any questions for staff? Seeing none. Ms. Wendy, you feel the need to make a final argument on this ordinance?
No, sir, I do not.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney, would you please advise the decision-making body is applicable law?
Substantial and competent evidence.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Now come time for deliberations. If there are no deliberations from the dais, I'll entertain a motion to approve and continue or deny.
Move to approve, Rick. Second.
Okay, I have a motion for approval from Commissioner Clark, seconded by Commissioner Martin. Are there any questions or comments from the dais on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, now see if we put our telephone number up, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of item 7 on our published agenda. This is a quasi-judicial hearing on ordinance 2020-36. We have a motion properly seconded on the floor to approve this ordinance. If you'd like to call in and make a comment, now is the time to do so. You can accomplish that by dialing phone number on your screen. That will get you into the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to make a comment. We're going to start with live comment, then we'll move to virtual comment. Do we have anybody live in the chamber that'd like to make a comment? Seeing none, Dallas, we have anyone virtually who'd like to make a comment? Okay. We'll come back to the dais. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. That's going to take us to item 8 on tonight's agenda, ordinance 2020-33. Scott, if you would, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. This is an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, relating to the amendment of the official zoning atlas for the rezoning of less than 5% of the total land area of the city, pursuant to an application by the city of Newberry, amending the official zoning atlas of the city of Newberry land development regulations, providing for rezoning from Alachua County Agriculture A zoning district to the city of Newberry Agriculture A zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida, which have been annexed thereto, tax parcel number 01816-001-000, consisting of approximately 9.64 contiguous acres, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2020-33, LDR 20-09, as read by title only.
Thank you, Scott. Dallas, do we have anyone new enter the meeting? Okay, let's go ahead and do ex parte. Commissioner Norfleet, Commissioner Coleman,
No.
Commissioner Farnsworth, Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Clark. Okay, then that will move us to Wendy with staff presentation and recommendation.
Okay, go ahead, Dallas.
We're on 33.
Thank you. I don't know what's happening.
We were on a roll there. The last two.
Yeah, it was. That was
Yeah.
working well. I don't know. They should all be there. All right, this application before you now is it's the rezoning of the property that you just approved on first reading, the comprehensive plan amendment. The next slide shows you the process that we are going through. You looked at the future land use small scale amendment, now the rezoning, which will implement that small scale amendment. The next slide shows you the location of the property up in the northern part of the city. And the next slide gives you a closer look. It's 9.64 acres owned by the Merrills, and it's to change from Alachua County Agriculture to City of Newberry Agricultural Zoning District. And as you see, there's a lot of agricultural area out there, and it's all consistent with that surrounding area and with the comprehensive plan. The next slide gives you the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board, which is approval of ordinance 2020-33 for LDR 20-09, contingent upon approval of ordinance 2020-32 that you heard earlier for CPA 2003. And the staff recommended action is to approve ordinance 2020-33 for application LDR 20-09 on first reading, contingent upon approval of ordinance 2020-32 for CPA 2003. And that concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Ms. Wendy. I've not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim a third-party intervener status. So that's going to move us to public comment. Dallas, if you'll put our phone number up for us. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to item 8 on tonight's published agenda. This is ordinance 2020-33. If you'd like to call in and make a comment, we are at the beginning of this quasi-judicial procedure, so now is the appropriate time to do so. All you need to do is dial a phone number on your screen. That will get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live comment, then we'll take virtual comment. Do we have anyone live in the public that would like to comment on ordinance 2020-33? Dallas, do we have anyone virtually who'd like to comment? Okay, then that's going to take us. We're going to skip through cross-examinations and members of the decision-making body. Do you have any questions of staff? Okay, hearing no questions. Ms. Wendy, do you feel the need to make a final argument on this ordinance?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Attorney, would you please advise the decision-making body as applicable law? Thank you. We've entered into deliberations. If there are no deliberations, I'll entertain a motion to approve conditions, continue, or deny.
Move to approve as written.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman, a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Any questions or comments on the motion on the floor from the dais? Hearing none. Dallas, if you'll put our phone number back up, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of quasi-judicial of the third or fourth quasi-judicial, is item 8. This is ordinance 2020-33. We have a motion, probably second on the floor, to approve this ordinance. If you'd like to call in and make a comment, all you need to do is dial the phone number on your screen. Once we are in the meeting, simply click that little hand symbol at the bottom of your screen. That'll let us know you'd like to make a comment. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. Let's start with live comment here in the chamber, then we'll move to virtual comment. Do we have anyone live in the audience that'd like to make a comment? Seeing none. Dallas, do we have anyone virtually you'd like to make a comment? Seeing none, we'll come back to the dais. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And that's going to take us to ordinance 2020-35. Scott, would you please read that into the record?
Yes, sir.
I'll do my best.
An ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, relating to the amendment of the official zoning atlas of the rezoning as for the rezoning of less than 5% of the total land area of the city, pursuant to an application by the city of Newberry amending the official zoning atlas of the city of Newberry land development regulations, providing for rezoning from Alachua County Agricultural A zoning district to a city of Newberry Agricultural A zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida, which have been annexed thereto. Tax parcel number 02568-007-000, which is consisting of approximately 2.98 contiguous acres, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2020-35, LDR 20-09, as read by title only.
Thank you, Scott. Now, so we have anyone new enter the room? Okay, we'll go ahead and do ex parte. Commissioner Norfleet, Commissioner Coleman, Commissioner Farnsworth, Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Clark. Okay, we have no one else to swear in, so Ms. Wendy, go ahead and take it away.
Okay. This application is your fifth quasi-judicial hearing for first reading of an amendment to the zoning atlas. The next slide shows you the process for annexation, which involves annexing this into the city, which was done for this property of 2.98 acres back on November 9th. Then the future land use map amendment, a small scale amendment under 10 acres, you just heard and approved on first reading. And now the rezoning, which would implement that small scale amendment, is before you. The next slide shows you the property's location down in the southeast area of the city. The next slide gives you a closer look of that property. It's 2.9 acres, BMB squared, Billy Belt's property that's going from Alachua County Agriculture Zoning District to the City of Newberry Agricultural Zoning District. The next slide gives you the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board, which met on December 7th. They recommended unanimously to the City Commission to approve the ordinance 2020-35 contingent upon approval of the ordinance you approved on first reading prior to this for CPA 2003. So the next slide gives you the recommended action. We recommend that you'd approve ordinance 2020-35 on first reading contingent upon approval of ordinance 2020-34 for CPA 2003.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wendy. I have not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim a third-party intervener status, so that's going to move us to public comment. Dallas, if you could put our phone number back on the screen for us. Ladies and gentlemen, we come to item 8 on tonight's published agenda. This is ordinance 2020-33. If you would like to call in and make a comment on this, we've come to public comment in this quasi-judicial. Now is the appropriate time to do so. All you need to do to accomplish that is dial the phone number on your screen. Once we have you in the meeting, look to the bottom of your screen. You see a little hand symbol. Click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to address the commission. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live comment, then we'll go to virtual comment. Do we have anyone live in the chamber who'd like to make a comment on this ordinance? Seeing none. Do we have anyone virtually who'd like to make a comment? Okay, seeing none, we will come back. We're going to skip through cross-examinations to members of the decision-making body. If you have any questions of staff, now's the time to do it. Seeing none, Ms. Wendy, do you feel the need to make a final argument on this ordinance?
No, Mayor, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Attorney, would you please advise the decision-making body as applicable law?
Competent and substantial evidence.
Thank you, sir. We'll move to deliberations. If there are no deliberations, I'll entertain a motion to approve with conditions to continue or deny. I have a motion from Commissioner Norfleet, a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Do we have any questions or comments on the motion on the floor from the dais? Seeing none, Dallas, if you'll put our phone number back up. Ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of item 8 on tonight's published agenda. This is ordinance 2020-33. If you'd like to call in and make a comment on this ordinance, now is the time to do so. Are we on 9? We're on 9. We're on 8 still. We're on 9? I thought it was 2020-33. Mine's a little mixed up. I've been making notes. So now is the appropriate time to do so. There's a phone number on your screen. Dial in. Once we have you in the meeting, you'll see a little hand symbol at the bottom of your screen. Simply click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to make a comment. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We'll start with live comment. Do we have anyone in the chamber who'd like to make a comment? Do we have anyone virtually like to make a comment? Hearing none, we'll come back to the dais. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. That's going to take us to our next quasi-judicial, which is ordinance 2020-35. Am I still in line?
No, I think this is number 37.
Did I skip one? We got one done, and I didn't even know it. Perfect. See, I had it marked out. Okay,
This
this
is
is
37.
on tonight's published agenda, first reading of ordinance 2020-37. Mr. Attorney, would you please read that into the record for us?
Yes, sir. Our last one. This is ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, relating to the amendment of the official zoning atlas for the rezoning of less than 5% of the total land area of the city pursuant to an application by the City of Newberry amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Newberry land development regulations, providing for rezoning from Alachua County Agricultural A zoning district to the City of Newberry Agricultural A zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, which have been annexed thereto, Tax parcel number is 02519-003-000, consisting of approximately 7.5 contiguous acres, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2020-37 LDR 20-09 as read by title only.
Thank you, Scott.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
do we have anyone new enter the chamber? Okay, then we'll move to ex parte. Commissioner Norfleet, Commissioner Coleman, Commissioner Farnsworth, Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Clark. Okay, we have no one else to swear in, no one new, so Ms. Wendy, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to point out that these applications that you're hearing tonight, the quasi judicial items the reason why we're doing all these separately is because they are small scale plan amendments, and that way it maintains that status and doesn't require an additional review by the state. This application is for rezoning to implement the previous plan amendment that you approved on first reading. The next slide shows you the process for property that's recently annexed into the city. The first thing, so the property had an ordinance passed where back in November, approving the city to, gosh, wait a minute. Okay, and then we did the future land use map small scale plan amendment. You made that hearing. This is a rezoning public hearing to implement the future land use map changes you approved on first reading. The next slide shows you the location of the property, generally over on the west side of the city near on County Line Road. The next slide gives you a closer look of the property. It is located north of Southwest 30th Avenue and on the east side of 298th Street. That is a request to go from Alachua County Agriculture Zoning District to the City of Newberry Agricultural Zoning District. It's 7.5 acres. And the next slide gives you the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board for approval of the ordinance 2020-37 LDR 2009, contingent upon approval of ordinance 2020-36 CPA 2003. The recommended action is for approval of ordinance 2020-37. This is for application LDR 2009 to change the zoning on first reading, contingent upon approval of ordinance 2020-36 CPA 2003. And I just add that this is very special to be able to put these applications through, because it is helping a couple of the applicants who have pending additions to their homes and other actions that they're doing, that if they were still in the county, they have additional fees they would have to pay. So once this is in the city, this is going to save them a bunch of money. So they're much, much appreciative.
Well, thank you, Ms. Wendy. I've not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim a third-party intervener status, so that's going to move us to public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to item 10 on tonight's published agenda. This is ordinance 2020-37. We're at public comment, so this is your opportunity to call in and make any comment you'd like about this ordinance. If you'd like to do that, all you need to do is dial the number on your screen. That will get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, look to the bottom of your screen. You see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to make a comment. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to start with live comment, then we'll go to virtual comments. Anyone live in the chamber like to make a comment? Hearing none, is there anyone virtually who'd like to make a comment? Okay, well, we will come back. We're going to move through cross-examinations. Two members of the decision-making body through the chair ask questions of staff. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none. Ms. Wendy, do you feel the need to make a final argument on this ordinance?
No, Mayor, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney, would you please advise the decision-making body as the applicable law?
Competent substantial evidence.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that. We've come to deliberations at tonight's meeting. If there are no deliberations, I'll entertain a motion to approve with conditions, continue or deny the application. I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Clark. Are there any questions or comments on the motion on the floor from the dais? Seeing none, Dallas, if you'll put our telephone number up on the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of item 10, which is another rezoning or another quasi-judicial. This is ordinance 2020-37. We have a motion probably seconded on the floor for approval. If you'd like to call in and make a comment about that motion, now's the time to do so. Just dial the phone number on your screen. That'll get you in the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, at the bottom of your screen, you see a little hand symbol. Simply click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to make a comment. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. We're going to begin with live comment in the chamber, then we'll go to virtual comment. Do we have anyone in the chamber who'd like to comment? Do we have any virtual and like to comment? Hearing none. That's going to bring us back to the board. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and that will take us to agenda items. Thank you, Ms. Wendy. You did a great job getting us through all of those quasi-judicials. Thank you, Commission. Thank you, public, for bearing with us. And that will take us to our one agenda item, item 11, which is food truck regulations. Mike, is this going to be you or Brian?
Mr. Mayor, the planning director, Brian Thomas, is going to lead us through this presentation.
Okay. As he's coming to the dais, I just want to let the commission know that I asked our staff to bring this to you guys first. I think we need to make a little bit of a shift and when it comes to these kinds of things. And I think we need to have these conversations among the decision-making body first, give direction to staff about what they want, what you guys want to see. Have staff write up a draft, and then take that draft that is heavily influenced by what you guys want it to be to the P&Z. And that way, when we present it to the P&Z, we can be very clear that this is what the commission would like to see. And we want their help tweaking it, giving some advice. But these are the things that you guys feel very strongly about. So we're going to reorganize a little bit how we begin these kinds of conversations so that they start with you guys. That way we have a little bit more clarity. So with that, Brian, go ahead and take it away and talk to us about food truck regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's actually, I wasn't able to find a picture of them in Newberry yet, but this is one of our newest food trucks out here in Newberry that's operating. So I was able to find a picture of the group. So to start with, recently the Florida legislature in the 2020 session basically passed a preemption on food trucks and a bunch of other things, but specifically to food trucks, they basically took away the city's ability to add any additional registration requirements or licensing requirements or the ability to charge additional fees to operate food trucks in their jurisdictions. And so no license requirements, registrations, permits of any kind can be added beyond those that the state already imposes on food trucks. Same goes, like I said, with fees. The only fees that you can be charged are those that the state imposes for licensure. And you're not allowed to prohibit food trucks from operating in the entirety of your jurisdiction. So you can't just make a blanket ordinance that says food trucks not allowed to operate. You have to give them some space to operate within. A little bit more on the statutes. A food truck in this instance is referring to a self-contained unit. So if it's a truck, if it's a trailer pulled by another vehicle, as long as it's self-contained, meaning it basically has its own onboard utilities, water, drainage, a tank to hold the wastewater, gas, or even generator for electricity, it's considered self-contained. It's considered a food truck. And this just goes a little bit farther, is the actual language in the statute prohibiting the additional regulations. But one thing it doesn't do is take away the city's or the county's abilities to regulate sort of the how, where, when, and why kind of, issues. And so food trucks are regulated by the state at the Division of Hotels and Restaurants level. Basically, they have to get a license to operate and dispense food. They have a have to provide a kitchen plan, apply for the license, pay the fees, and this is all at the state level, schedule and pass the license and inspection. And those inspections are done by the state on an annual, minimum of an annual basis, just like a regular restaurant would be done. And so other regulations, though, that the municipalities can impose We can charge them just like any other business in the city, the business tax receipt. We have regulation authority over the zoning, which districts that they would be allowed in, what type of hours of operation, how often they can operate out of the same location, how much noise is allowable, what kind of signage they are allowed to put up as a temporary use. Waste collection, obviously, solid waste collection. What kind of parking and requirements you can impose on them, and whether or not they're allowed to operate in right-of-ways. And so currently, our city code requires that mobile food vendors and all mobile vendors get a mobile vendor's license. It's an additional registration requirement. It's actually fairly involved. It takes a fair amount of time and staff time to comply with it. And then also charges an additional mobile vendor's license fee over and above the business tax fee. And so as the popularity of food trucks increases, we're getting more and more requests for mobile vendors licenses. And of course, we can't actually impose those on food trucks because of the state preemption now. And so we haven't been, but we need to clean up our code in relation to the mobile food vendors. And so staff's been directed to not only clean up the ordinance so it's compliant with the state statute, but also sort of thread that needle to where we're accommodating to food trucks in the community, but then also providing reasonable suggestions or reasonable regulations so that they're compatible with the area they operate in, as well as other restaurants and businesses around them. And so looked around at some other local examples and wanted to share with you the example of the city of Gainesville. They just amended their food truck ordinances. And so pretty much an individual food truck, or actually two or so food trucks, can operate by right in just about all of the the commercial zoning districts. They're not allowed in residential zoning districts, with the exception of mixed use, where you have a combination of commercial and residential combined. There's provision to allow for that. They don't allow more than 2 food trucks for every half acre, or up to 4 food trucks on a full acre, unless they're in what's designated in their code as a food truck park. This is actually a 100% increase over what they had just recently. Before they made the amendments, they only allowed 1 and 2. Now they allow 2 and 4. So they're loosening up their regulations. They do have to be moved nightly, but they can operate from 7 a.m. until 4 a.m. in the following morning. And they do allow for food truck special events where they can set up shop for a couple of days, not have to move because it's a special event that's been with some additional permitting. And they can do those on the same location once every 30 days. And so that's sort of the general individual food truck rules that they've established. And then they also allow for food truck parks, which are basically 4 or less food trucks in a park setting are allowed in all the same zoning categories, commercial zoning categories, that an individual truck would be allowed. Again, not in the strictly residentially zoned districts. And they, if you've got more than 4 food trucks, you can also do a truck park, but there's a little bit higher level of permitting required. You have to get a special use permit for that. And so those in food truck parks are allowed to stay overnight. They don't have to change out every day. They are required to provide, the park is required to provide electrical connections. Generators aren't allowed unless for emergencies to cut down on the noise. You can imagine if you had 4, 5, 7, or 8, generators all running at the same time, it get pretty noisy. And they have to provide, it was interesting, they have to provide restroom facilities that are connected to municipal water and wastewater utilities. You can't just put portalets out there. And then they also allow for the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages, but only if it's allowed in the zoning district in which they're operating. So if alcohol is not allowed, they still wouldn't be able to do it, but if it's in a zoning district that allows it, they can. And just throw up there an example of the latest food park that's been proposed in Gainesville. As you can see, it's got 4 pads for the food trucks themselves, some covered umbrella seating areas. This one in particular one has a plan for a small stage and some open grassy area where they'll have small music venues come in, or music acts come in and play. And so with all of that, I tried to come up with a list of discussion topics to get guidance from the commission on what you want to see in an amendment for our food truck ordinances. And so first question, of course, would be, where would the commission like to see them allowed to operate? Staff does have some recommendations. We also think it's appropriate to allow them in all the commercial and industrial districts, not the residential districts necessarily.
Yeah, I think that's, let's start with commercially zoned districts, Commissioner Martin. My only question about that, does that mean if I'm on an empty vacant lot that's in an industrial or commercially zoned area, can I just pull up on someone's lot and set up there?
Mr.
By right?
We will get to that question. That's one of the questions.
Okay, so we can say commercial area, and then you got to work out permission with somebody, obviously, to not trespass, that kind of thing. Mr. New.
Mr. Mayor, and Brian is correct that staff recommends commercial zoning districts only, but just to point out to the commission that we have a fair number of food trucks that just drive into neighborhoods and set up in some street, which is a problem for us.
That'd be residential, which is the next topic.
Yeah, it would be residential and
we haven't got to residential yet. You're jumping the gun.
I'm sorry.
Come on.
Well,
I'm just going to be quiet over here, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, residential. Residential. Do I get an eye over it?
Well, really, that brings that's two issues: whether or not it would be allowed in residential, but also whether or not it'd be allowed in public right of way without a special permit to say that you're allowed to set up in the street. But
that doesn't seem to be our call, right?
Beg your pardon?
I mean, just set up in the right of way. That's like, isn't that an ASO? That's a ticket if you just park in the street without a permit from us shutting the street down.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it is a violation, and staff, of course, recommend that we not allow them to just drive up into right of way and set up shop. That, there may be some particular areas of right of way that could be an appropriate place for it, but they would need to come in to get a permit from the city first, so that we could guarantee that it was safe, that it had parking, that kind of thing.
Are we on residential now? Because
well,
is that what we're?
I just wanted to point one thing out, that food trucks are these self-contained units. They prepare food and everything. This would not cover something like a ice cream truck. The ice cream trucks would still be allowed to go do their routes through the neighborhoods. This is specific to food truck vendors.
Okay, Commissioner Clark.
My question is, Brian, what are we doing right now?
Right now,
and the second caveat is, what neighborhood are they setting up in that they got where we may need to get involved in that?
I think that what's precipitated this conversation isn't any particular problem. It's the state changing the law on us. So now we have to clean up ours.
Well, let's go back. And what is our current zoning for them?
Our current code doesn't specifically state which districts it's allowed in.
Okay.
And so that's part of the reason for the question is, do we want to take a little bit of a hold of that and designate where they are allowed and where they're not?
I mean, I think some of our neighborhoods have particularly good spots to allow this to happen, and they've been enjoying this. I know Newberry Place has a little playground area that's got some sort of a drive-in parking lot, and you could easily set there without being in a right of way. Newberry Oaks has sort of an apron that you can get off, but you're kind of on the right of way. So to me, it's all about whether or not your neighborhood has an area, because I've got a lot of feedback from people that have been enjoying this. We're on residential now.
Well, how much is the special permit, is it free? Just to let us know. Are we charging these people?
We're not allowed to
We're not
charge.
charging.
We're not allowed to charge.
Okay, that's good.
Mr. New?
Mr. Mayor, I would say for the city commission's consideration that if we were going to allow them in residentially zoned areas, it would need to be in a common area at a, maybe the HOA has a swimming pool or recreation area where there would be room both for the vendor to set up and room to park. Because even if you can find that cul-de-sac or that apron where the vendor can set up safely, what happens is you end up with 3 or 4 cars that park out in the street and create an unsafe traffic situation.
I agree, but would we be on the page as long as we can write up the ordinance that delineates that, or is that just too hard for us to articulate, so we just want to say no residential? Commissioner Martin?
I think we can address some of these things on a case-by-case basis rather than just giving them a blanket no.
So Brian, off the top of your head, what would that wording look like? Allowed in residential areas as long as you are allowed, as long as you're able to not, you or your customers not block the right of way. Something like that.
Yes, well, Mr. Mayor, what we probably would recommend is that if they want to operate in the residential neighborhood, it would take a special permit. And actually the permit for where they could operate, like if they wanted a permit to operate in the city right of way, you could charge a small fee for that, because that's not charging a fee to operate. Well, I go to Scott with that actually, for final determination. Of course, all this will be reviewed by the city attorney when we draft it up.
Okay, I hear that there's desire for residential. Is there any desire for the right of way, or do we want to steer clear of that? Because then we don't have to worry about these nuanced legal questions.
It's not
Mr.
for
New.
local streets. We could, you guys have jurisdiction over local streets. Staff strongly recommends against it in local streets. And I think that an exception could be in our code that if you want to have a food truck in a residential area, it comes with authorization from the city. You have to submit a site plan. If we evaluate your site and it is clearly safe, like a common area, we can even write that into the area. These are into the code that these are the things that would qualify. Then you want to be in there, submit a petition. Brian or I say, yeah, go for it, or no, that's not going to cut it. We don't have adequate parking.
Yeah, in the right of way sounds to me like an event, like you're shutting a street down, that kind of a thing.
Well, and that could be one of the exceptions, is if you have a dare I say it, block party permit, which we'll be addressing soon.
You had to say
not tonight, but we will be addressing very shortly. A legitimate block party where
the old school, right?
Exactly.
Barbecues,
The neighbors get a permit to close the street for the evening, and everybody gets out and
Florida Georgia games.
Yeah.
they
Commissioner
could have
Clark.
them then, maybe.
So, Mr. Mayor, I suppose, so I hear this paperwork, this red tape or whatever we're going to start imposing on the people. Here's my question. If somebody wanted to do this in a, just say a 24-hour fashion, could we put this somewhere where and you just said it's very tough to get the MVL or the, whatever you were saying earlier?
Yes, the mobile vendor license.
Okay, so
registration.
let's just say we have a mobile vendor license. Can we put something in place to where the red tape ain't weeks out, and a man, if they wanted to do something, or a truck or a business wanted to come into town, we could relatively get it done within a 24-hour period, or 1 or 2 business days or something?
Well, Mr. Mayor, actually,
Or could we do it online, something that eases the process and the pain for people wanting to come here? We don't want to run people out.
I mean,
think.
well, I just want to clarify, we can't regulate food trucks. Like they're regulated by the state. We always say is regulate how you operate in our city. Right. So.
But these special use permits, Mr. Mayor, what I'm getting at.
Right.
Start imposing paperwork and different things on them coming to town, and how easy can they do it, get it done relatively easy to come to town?
I mean, I think that, Mr. News,
Mr. Mayor, what we're proposing here is they'd have the right to do it on commercial. They don't have to ask permission. The only thing that we're suggesting that they ask permission, we're talking about a 1-day review, is if they want to set up shop in a residential area on a common area. But if they're going to be on some commercial site, they don't have to ask us. All they have to do is ensure they have a business tax and
Right.
they're good to go.
That's what we're trying to do here is figure out what they can do by right. And then if they want to do something outside of that, then they'd have to come in and ask.
And Mr. Mayor, now, one of the things that the current mobile vendor's license does require is, as we said, it would be by right in commercial, but we do still require that they provide an affidavit saying, from the owner, saying that they have permission to be there. That isn't completely necessary. I mean, if we wanted to say we trust the applicant with that, but it's a little bit of a protection so that we don't then end up in an enforcement action where you have to run somebody off because they don't have permission.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Commissioner Martin and then Commissioner Farnsworth.
And they still have to get the business tax.
How much?
They-
Well, how much?
You'll swap. You're still up here.
I mean, I'm wondering how much we need to get between the vendor and the property owner to begin with. I mean, that's kind of between the two of them anyway, isn't it?
It's the parking part.
It's a,
I mean, it's a
Well,
trespassing
if they're on
issue
the
at that
property,
point.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
property owners, that seems to be their problem, not mine. But whether or not they're there. I mean, if the property owner has a problem with them, they can call the sheriff, or they can go out there and run them off. That's my thinking.
I agree.
One of the,
Commissioner- hang on one second, Commissioner Farnsworth.
Okay, one of the problems I have is you have these food trucks coming in. They're taking away from businesses that are here, that are paying taxes, that are contributing to the city. And then you have these food trucks come in, they don't pay taxes, they don't have to buy a license. And I don't know that we need to make it so easy on them that they can just walk in and set up without going through at least some hoops.
Mr. Mayor, maybe
Commissioner Norfleet.
On the food trucks, I'd like to see, if we're gonna do something, I'd like to see a map that the staff put together of areas that they're gonna allow the food trucks, regardless whether it's commercial, residential, agricultural, whatever zoning codes we got. And if they're outside of that, then, they need a special permit, but as long as they're within that map drawing of what your designated right of ways, that can be like Seaboard or whatever in different places. But, I'm kind of with Commissioner Farnsworth, they competing with our local restaurants here.
Well, I would say too that, because I told Commissioner Clark, there hasn't been any specific incident that has spurred this, but we have recently had a couple of food trucks that have just sort of set up shop, which our mobile license already regulates. You have to move. You can't just put a food truck up like a restaurant. But the state superseded us on some things anyway, so it was time for us to come back and figure out how to make this work. I get my only question about a map, because I think that's an interesting idea, but what happens when zoning changes? Now we have to continually change the map, or do we just say commercial, you can do it, HOA neighborhoods, you guys decide for yourselves if you want to, if you have a safe place, residents? I mean, because if you just draw like a Main Street area, and that sort of T, and you say, okay, food trucks can operate in there. What if I want to have one on my farm for a day or something? I'm throwing a Countryway Town Center wants to have one, something like that.
If I might, Mr. Mayor, if I may, perhaps very quickly going through all the discussion item issues so that because some of them have context with the other issues as well, it all blends. And so we go through them really quick and then go back and go one by one. Because I think we're missing some of the overall
30 seconds,
context.
go.
We're getting into some of the other issues. Okay.
Give us the whirlwind version.
Yes, sir. Okay, so another issue, should they be allowed to set up shop on vacant lots as opposed to developed lots? And staff's recommendation on that is actually not to let them set up on vacant lots. There's a number of issues that come with that. The recommendation would actually be to set them up on existing businesses that have parking lots with extra parking where they can set up and it doesn't interfere with the regular flow of traffic, but takes care of the parking issue, the ingress and egress issues, and some of the other things that accrue to vacant lots.
What about restrooms?
Um,
Required to have restrooms?
It's on the list. Can you wait, sir?
Should food trucks be required to move daily, or should they be allowed to stay overnight? Staff recommends that they do need to be, remain mobile. They need to stay mobile and move each night to wherever their home base is, unless they're in a designated food truck park. Should they be allowed to set up picnic tables and seating for customers? Again, staff's recommendation on that would be no, unless they're in a designated food truck plaza area. What happened here?
Try to go really fast and you hit that clicker too many times in a row.
Something. Well, you only told me 30 seconds.
That's true.
Next to last. There we go. Thank you. Should food trucks be allowed to connect to city water and wastewater utilities? Again, staff's recommendation would be no, other than electric.
Time out.
Commissioner Coleman.
Mr. Mayor, wasn't we having a problem with that because of grease and all that? That they weren't.
Mr. Mayor, we were. We had one particular area where just by chance a vacant lot had a full sewer connection available. And so one of the tenants that was renting the lot from the owner, before we got out there and actually inspected, had already hooked up to sewer and water, and they had gone through utilities, and so they had an account set up, but they didn't realize that they weren't actually supposed to be doing that. And then once they were up, they stayed connected until they left.
Can you stand by till it's done?
Sure.
Should food trucks be allowed to serve alcoholic beverages either on an individual basis or if located in a food truck park or at a permitted special event? Staff has no recommendation on that. It's a pure policy decision by the commissions. They're staying away from that one. Should the city do away with the mobile vendor license requirements altogether? And staff's recommendation would be to get rid of the MLB requirements and instead amend our business tax table to include a category for mobile vendors. And then while we're doing that, we would also need to create a special event mobile vendor license fee for like the one-time events in a year. It's one thing if you're going to have a food truck that comes in and is going to operate potentially throughout the year. Makes sense they would pay a full business tax. But if you've got somebody coming out to Gatorback that's only going to be there for 1 to 4 days, 5 days on a special event, and that's the only time during the year, to me, it makes sense that we would offer them a lesser fee for a special event fee. And the reason we would have to address that is because, for instance, the special exception for Gatorback requires that the mobile vendors pay the mobile vendor tax. Or mobile vendor license, obtain a mobile vendor's license each year. And so this would, if we eliminate the MLB, then we can make it easier on them as well.
Okay. Is that all the predetermined discussion topics?
That, Mr. Mayor, is the extent of the predetermined. So I'll go back to
the other page. So far I've heard a unanimous commercially zoned, no problem. We want to try a residential option. So draft us something that gives us some control to make sure the right of ways are protected, but an idea of how we could allow that. Keep on clicking there so we get through.
Okay.
All right. What about the vacant lots? What do people feel about the vacant lots?
And Mr. Mayor, was it just the idea, the problem with the vacant lots is things like they typically don't always have proper aprons, and so they tear up the side of the roadway when they ingress and egress.
Restrooms, those kinds of things.
Drag dirt out onto no restrooms.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner
I'm
Cole.
going to go with staff's decision on that. I think it's good because really what it comes down to is, like Brian said, is parking. And if you, like right down here at New to You, the guy was coming in with the fish and all that, people could go in there
Right.
and park, where a lot of times vacant lots are just flying in there and parking in the ditch and in the right of way. And I agree totally on that one.
Anyone want to offer an opposing view, or everyone's good with that?
We're just massaging this.
Just massaging it, just
So
discussion.
go with that.
Okay, all right, next one. Come on. Do you have to have the owner? What, and are you talking about the affidavit there? Because I would tend to agree with Commissioner Martin. That seems onerous. If I come and go to New to You and I didn't ask her permission, she's gonna find out and call ASO and say, get off my property. You know, is that what you mean by that?
Mr. Mayor, currently it's a requirement they have an owner affidavit. It doesn't have to be a requirement. If the commission says, you know what, in these districts, it's allowable by right.
Because that seems like a lot that we would have to follow up on, like show me this, show me that kind of a thing. But
I would,
Commissioner Clark,
in my take on this, I'm saying staff simplify it, but we do need to have some way of holding it accountable.
right?
And there's a few more things coming up here that we could, I believe, would solve a lot of this.
And remember, guys,
The
as
restrooms, the water, washing your hands,
Right.
these things have got to be.
right, as always, this is going to be an ordinance, so we could take the affidavit out, try it for 6 months. If we have a lot of problems, people trespass, we just bring the ordinance back, put that affidavit back in.
Mr. Mayor, I just offer that rather than requiring a food truck vendor to come down to the Little Red Schoolhouse or City Hall and show proof, that they just have it
on site.
You have to have something on you that says you have permission to be there in case someone stops by and said, show me.
Put that in the draft, and when we come back, we'll sleep on it. All right.
Okay.
Move daily. That seems like a no-brainer. Unless there's a festival or something like that you're setting up. Anybody have thoughts on moving daily? 7 to, it's Newberry, so we like to shut down about 10 o'clock at night, so.
I don't know why we even gotta come up with a time.
Yeah.
You move daily.
When the business ain't coming in,
They're
they're
gone.
loading up and getting out of there.
Commissioner Clark.
So I hear Commissioner Farnsworth on this saying, and my recommendation is we get something from the vendors some way, a few bucks to help do things. But it also allows choices in our city. Even though our residents are growing and we're growing substantially, if they don't eat at the local restaurant, they're not going to eat anywhere.
They're
But
gonna
if
go
we have
somewhere else.
choices, then they'll go support another business that may be a food truck. But we should hold some way of getting a little money from the business side or the business tax, just like everybody.
Yeah.
If you're coming in to do business, you pay some sort of business tax. I don't know what that is here. I've never seen it, but everybody else pays, so do they.
Yeah, absolutely. What, move daily though, was a head nod?
Mr. Mayor.
I'm not
Well enough about moving daily. I don't know necessarily sitting there for 2 weeks, but.
I mean, our mobile vendors, it says that you have to move 3 days.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, the mobile vendor license we have now requires they can't be left unattended for more than an hour. And so they would be required, they're required, they're not complying with it, but they're required to be moving every day. So.
Okay, so we have disagreement on this. I mean, I think in your presentation, there was you're doing your daily operations, you move every day, and then there's a caveat if you are part of a 2-day weekend festival or an event, you could set up right there, which that sounded reasonable.
Or if you're in an actual designated food truck
park,
plaza,
then you could stay there. Is there, so do we want to hash, I don't sense real strong feelings about this on either side. Do we want to hash it out? Do we want to say, stick with it, we'll sleep on it, stick with it as moving daily and we'll sleep on it?
If we even extended it to 3 days, at least they can stay there.
Well, so.
And it would probably cover most sort of special events.
It just goes back, Mr. Mayor, to what Mr. Farnsworth said. You got all these businesses here paying property taxes and all this, and there needs to be some type of some skirting a little bit, so, because they gotta move. Because, if I was a restaurant owner here, it's gotta be kind of tough, especially when taxes are in Washington County.
I mean, one of my concerns with allowing more than one day is who regulates that then. Now, do we have an argument about how long you've been there? I mean, if it's, you move every day, I know if you've been there more than one day, I know there's a special event. If you start getting into 2 or 3 days, well then people, we drive, these all happen on the weekends when we're not really here, so then someone calls and says, well, they've been there for 4 days. Well, how do we know that, and I don't really think that this is going to be an issue with most of our local food truck because they all pack up and go home anyway. Right. So what we're talking about here is giving our staff a way to easily regulate the 1 or 2 bad apples who will come in and try to abuse it and set up somewhere. So 1 day, that's easy to figure out. 3 days, no one's going by. It's not a meter maid marking a tire to see how long you've been there.
Paul said he wants that job.
Yeah.
On the caveat, Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Clark.
What if they lease the land? What if they lease something in the community and they have a long-term lease with their food truck? But I think the biggest, and I'm just saying for me personally, the hygiene has got to be taken care of first. That will take care of itself. If you ain't got that, you can't be in regulation.
Well, and that's the other thing. If you're making a move, then they have to go and take and dump their grease and all that kind of stuff. If they stay there for 3 days, they pile up.
Yeah, I mean,
quite a bit.
For hygiene, and that's an inspector's problem.
Right. So making a move
regulated
mitigates all of that.
Currently, the inspections of food trucks, because they're regulated at the state level, is the state. But again, that's likely once or twice at most a year. So,
Mr. Mayor, do we get the sales tax?
We do get the sales tax on that? Do we get sales tax on food trucks? I mean, the county gets it.
I imagine, Mr. Mayor, it goes into the mix of all the sales.
Most of the food trucks that I know, there's a flat rate. It's $10 for a plate.
Mr. Mayor, sales taxes are remitted at the county-wide level, regardless of where the food trucks are. So if the food truck is properly collecting sales tax, which they should,
right,
as a food service, they would remit that to the state, and then the state distributes out to the cities based on the formula they use. So we get it regardless of whether or not they're in the city or not.
Okay, so just to move this conversation along, because we're just, do we want to leave it at move daily and everybody can sleep on it, and if you still have strong heartburn? Okay, leave it at daily, and then we'll come back and we'll see how people feel, which would take care of the overnight, right? Okay, come on.
Okay. Would they be allowed to set up picnic tables?
I mean, if they're moving every day, what does it matter? They'll set them out, and then they clear them out at the end of the day.
Well, I guess conceivably they could leave them there and come back and park next to them again.
But if you had a long-term lease, that's like getting that, just on the same thing. What would we?
Well, but I think the issue with the long-term lease is if one of these on the other page that I remember is sort of making a man work with an existing business. So I couldn't, that's what we had over here next to the liquor store. People were leasing that property, but it's a vacant lot. So you'd fail in the ordinance on it being a vacant lot part. You'd also fail on not being mobile. And so I couldn't just lease out someone's parking lot, and say, well, I'm going to lease it from you for every weekend. Well, I guess if you worked with the business, you might be able to lease it every weekend. Say, I want to be here every weekend. Hang on one second, Mr. New, and then Commissioner Farnsworth.
And in theory, you address a lot of the concerns that have been expressed to us about the vacant lot. Is what about parking? Because if it's permanent business, we've accomplished that. What about restrooms? If it's permanent business, we've accomplished that. Proper ingress and egress. So you really, if the commission decides to make it, it has to be a populated lot. There has to be something there on the lot. It can't be vacant. I think you address a lot of concerns that have raised issues about an unlevel playing field. You know, the one at the vacant lot near the liquor store, when we discussed with them about bathrooms, they said, well, you know, our customers don't use bathrooms. They just come through, pick it up and go on. I said, well, what about your employees? And the guy told me, he said, oh, they just run across the street to Hardee's. And I thought that was, he didn't see the irony in that, but I thought it was very amusing that, yeah, we just use another restaurant's restroom.
Yeah. Commissioner Farnsworth?
I'm just kind of curious what the state's definition is of a food truck.
It's a good question, actually, because there's a difference between a peanut vendor, an ice cream truck, and
if you're, Mr. Mayor, if you're actually preparing the food in the truck, or even if you're bringing it from outside and reheating it and serving it, and you've got self-contained utilities in that you've either got a generator for electricity, or you have gas tanks to run fryers and grills. You've got your own onboard water, and you've got your own tanks to hold that water. Then you're considered self-contained. You also have to have refrigeration, and you have to have 3 sinks for washing. When you have all of those, you meet all of that criteria, then you're considered self-contained food truck.
They don't break it, they don't specify that it has to be mobile, that it has to be moved at any point in time.
To my knowledge, the state doesn't actually require them to move.
But the state just defines, and then they say each city, you decide how they operate. So whether you move or don't move, they're saying that's a city decision. But you can't say, and it makes sense, you wouldn't want in Alachua County for Newberry to say, no, we don't want any food trucks. And so now I have this license to be a food truck everywhere else, but I can't get in, you know, and now I have to know, you know, I have to keep track of who wants me and who doesn't want me. Back on the point about the populated lots, I think that also mitigates some, because your concern, I think, is the preeminent concern. Like, how is this fair to someone who spent, you know, $1 million building a restaurant, and now this guy spends $15,000 on a food truck and he's stealing on a business? If you make them have to work with a populated lot, another business, think of Joel's Coffee House down here. Now they're helping another business, so it sort of mitigates that. You know, I know that New to You has had a lot of success bringing, you know, people come to get food, they go into a shop, you know, so it still doesn't level the playing field completely, but at least it is helping everyone in some way, you know. What about the picnic tables? I mean, if they're having to move every day, I can't imagine someone setting out a bunch of tables and leaving them there overnight, and they're not going to be there when you get back.
Right in there, inclusionary language, it says anything you bring there gotta be gone.
Has to be gone. There you go. Next slide. Should we allow them to connect to city waterways? That seems like a lot of work if they're going to be there for a day. So that's a no.
Strong.
That's a no.
The capital S?
Yeah.
I can.
They're moving why would they? Why would they? Right. Defeats the whole mobile part. Okay. So that's a no. Next bullet. Yeah. Commissioner Norfleet. They take it with them. They have to, a mobile or a food truck has to have, I'm forgetting the language, like a consignment commissary. They have to have a commissary. So they pay somebody to be their industrial kitchen and they hook up and take their waste and their grease and all that kind of stuff. So that is something that the state regulates. So you have to have a commissary. We're not involved in that. They do that, Mr. Newman.
We're not involved in the regulation.
Right.
We have established a commissary service at the utility department. So for a monthly fee, we will provide you with water, and if you say that you'll have problems with that, then we'll allow you to discharge wastewater. We'll have the appropriate grease traps. We're enabling the service without making direct connections at each individual lot, which we find, you know, maybe people issue flat hose, hose leak, fill out on the ground, or they don't put grease traps in there or something like that. But that's a service that we kind of started to see how it goes. It's a part of it. No. The reason that it's not open to RVs could be RVs add a chemical to their wastewater to inhibit
bacteria can build on bacteria do. If that gets into our treatment plant, it inhibits our bacteria from doing what we want them to do. So RV septic is a different animal that we do.
So they charge that service?
We do. We do charge that service.
Okay, so that's a no. Next slide. Alcoholic beverages.
Mr. Mayor, the city regulates the kind of the where, when, and how of alcoholic sales in the city boundaries. And so it could be allowed, it could be prohibited, it could be allowed with.
Don't we give somebody the opportunity to come in for the special events? They get 3 a year, is that right? Or 2 a year? They
It's
come
at
in
the
and they get.
discretion of the commission, Mr. Mayor. We have granted that in the past to say, for instance, as an example, Main Street, when they have their festivals and things, we've either granted them up to a certain number, or somebody could come in on an individual basis. If we kind of use the Gainesville example of having a special food truck event where you want to have a lot of food truck vendors come in at a different special event, it could be built in there that it's allowable as part of that.
Okay, I didn't mean to cut you off, Commissioner Clark. Go ahead.
That's fine. It's just the way that's written in my eyes. The law tells somebody who can serve alcohol. We're just saying, are we allowed to serve it in the city if they have the proper license?
Is that?
Mr. Mayor, it would be if they were set up shop in the zoning district that allowed for alcohol sales.
You can't sell alcohol without some serious.
Right. So the vendor would have to have a beer and wine license.
Yes, sir.
Right.
They'd
So that's
have to
already
have-
regulated on that end.
They'd
Right.
have to have all of their state required regulations. And then they would have to demonstrate that they were operating and selling it in the proper zoning district.
That seems like something we should leave to them in the state.
I mean, they can set up in the residential area and serve alcohol.
That would be correct. Again, it would if it was in a zoning category that allowed for beer and wine sales. So for instance, off the top of my head, I don't think they'd be able to set up and sell beer or sell alcohol in industrial or in.
While you're thinking of that thought, it occurs to me that I like the event. You can sell alcohol if you're having a food truck event, because the way I've always used food trucks is I pull up and get it and I go. And I don't need it to go. I don't think we need to encourage to go beer or to go wine. So if you're at an event, you're going to be there for the afternoon. That's one thing. But and maybe I'm not in the food truck world enough to know. Maybe other people sit there.
I say, well, if they got the proper licenses from the state, the county, whomever to serve, then it's
In a commercial area.
You could have a beer truck or whatever.
Right.
I'm not for that. But,
In a commercial area.
Being in residentials and it'd be like your food
Yeah.
truck party or a Main
Yeah.
Street event or something.
Commissioner Coleman.
How many designated areas in Newberry has staff looked at for just a designated area for food trucks? Have y'all looked at, what's it, 3 or 4 maybe that we would have?
Well, Mr. Mayor, it would for food trucks, they'd be scattered all over the urbanized area of Newberry. So you up and down the main streets, and then the industrial park areas, they could operate through there.
Well, where I'm going with this is, especially after Commissioner Farnsworth's comment, I'm for right now. I would say that we would just have designated areas in Newberry, not every commercial place you can do it.
For the alcohol.
No, for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Going into these residential areas, that's where I want to be at. That's where I'm going to stand on this. I think there are 3 or 4 designated areas in Newberry, and they can set up shop there. It actually gives staff a lot easier. Hey, they're in these 4 areas. If they need to go by and ask questions or do anything, that's where I'm going to stand on this whole thing.
And by area, do you mean like a block, or do you mean like all of
I'm meaning-
27
I'm
is the
meaning,
area.
King Boulevard,
Right.
out here at Lois Fort,
We haven't got to
Easton.
parks yet.
Huh?
So we haven't got to parks yet.
No,
I was
I'm
gonna
just,
ask about
well,
parks.
I mean, all inclusive.
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, whatever the staff is coming up that's safe for parking, safe for alcoholic beverages, safe for kids running around there while they're doing it. I think that's the best way. Plus, it gives our local tax-paying restaurant owners more of a more fair chance. And
Okay.
that's, yeah. So that's where I'm at.
Because I have 2 commissioners that are in favor of identifying zones. And you talked about a map earlier.
Can I add to that?
Uh-huh.
If they, I like to identify the zones, but if they choose to sell as food trucks, then can we describe to our commissary?
Fortunately, you operate in Newberry, you have to be a commissary customer for us.
Mr. Mayor, commissary, as I understand it, generally provide a lot of food services. Most commissaries provide kitchen services, cooking services, so you can do all your food prep, and it's fairly expensive. So we don't want to get in necessarily into that business. There's a couple food trucks that approached us and said that joining the commissary is really a giant waste of money. We only need the water and wastewater component of that, and we find that their monthly charges are worth, $25 or less. They just don't use very much water or wastewater. But most of these are not coming. Monster Lobster comes out of Orlando. Most are coming out of the Gainesville. Now they're just coming all over North Central Florida. I don't think we'd have any success. I don't think there's enough Newberry-based food trucks to have to use them on a daily basis. One of the things, they have to come when we're open, which is 7 to 5:30 Monday through Thursday. It's not a 24/7 thing that's available to these folks.
Okay, so I've got 2 commissioners. Would you put in you're in favor of designating areas, or are you still pondering on that? Okay, how do y'all,
I'm okay with designated areas. We're massaging this right now. We'll see what
Yeah.
comes up.
I mean, my only concern with designated area, it seems like another layer of government, because there's going to be somebody eventually that's outside, and then they got to come for a special exception, which is fine. And I guess it depends on where we draw the lines and what's included in the area, and then who regulates that, right? So I'm set up. Yeah, right. I'm set up on a Saturday in an area that's not on the map. Somebody gonna call in and say, hey, that food truck can't be at MLK on a Saturday, and now we got to bring in someone a time and a half and call ASO. And
I'm not trying to bring in more government. What I'm trying to do is make it easy.
Yeah.
If you got 4 or 5 areas that you can set up that's approved by us, the city, go set up there. Advertise that you're going to be there on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, whatever. I mean, you got just like you said, you got Hardee's across the road, but that guy by the seat of his pants is doing whatever he wants to do, which is, he's using other taxpayers to get by what it is. I mean, you go into these neighborhoods, what's going to happen? I'll give you a good example. What's going to happen at Newberry Oaks as soon as commercial is developed right there to the left of where they're parking to sell their stuff. And it's just not only them, it's AT&T. They go in there for their internet and all that. But that will, what is it? When they go in there to park, they're running over I've seen it. I live there. They go over the top of the thing to go up in there and park, which is on the right of way, our right of way. And then I know what they're going to say. Oh yeah, we won't let that happen no more, or whatever. Nah, 4 or 5 designated areas is really the best way to go We're not governing it, but you gotta go there.
Okay.
And that's
Well,
where I'm at.
Unless anyone wants to argue the point more, I'd say we're bringing back some ideas about what those areas will be like, and then we'll continue the conversation when we have something to look at. Okay. Next. Yeah, I think there was a sub staff here. I saw a lot of people shaking their heads yes to this. We in agreement do away with the MLV or MVL, have a reduced rate.
Yeah.
So that's a yes.
Stream-
Okay.
Streamline.
All right. Was this the last?
Mr. Mayor, that is the last issue I thought of, unless the commissioners have additional items.
But we're back to the way to go ahead.
Mr. Martin.
Brian, was there anything in your investigation on this? The thought that I jumped into my head was somebody who is using a mobile food truck as a caterer or as a private party or something like that. Would you, anything on those sorts of things?
Mr. Mayor, generally, most of the cities I looked at, when they established rules for, say, food trucks or food truck vendors, a lot of the stuff was exempted for existing businesses that also had a catering truck or trailer, or that kind of thing. So obviously they're allowed to park their truck or trailer overnight at the restaurant and things like that. But as far as just doing catering, didn't really come across that too much, Mr. Mayor, as far as or at all how that would be handled. I mean, if it's a mobile food truck by definition of the state, and they're going to operate out of your city, then in my mind, they would fall under the same guidelines.
Because I'm thinking about.
I think Mike wants to add to Brian's answer. Did you have more?
What I think is say if you have a wedding venue in Newberry, because we have 4, and you're having a wedding in there and you have a catering company in, since you're not vending to the public, you're just providing a food service for the event. I think they're just exempt. They're not under the guise of mobile food truck sales. They're now caterers and completely different category for how they're regulated.
Okay. Did that answer your question?
No, I think that, but let's say we have a business that wants to bring in a food truck and they're not in a designated area that we are going to be coming up with. And then what are we going to do? What are we going to do then? So we're going to make them jump through a hoop and come get a special exemption for something that a business is wanting to do on their own private property?
Not through us, huh? Something
Well,
staff.
I would say, Mr. Mayor, I think probably it would be a fairly easy solution. Again, we would exempt them from the overnight parking kind of requirements, that kind of thing. And except for maybe some kind of special event. The restaurant
But those would have to come
isn't
through
going
us.
to open the food truck with the restaurant on site. And so if they fell outside of the areas designated that the commission selects, then they would just basically they'd be parking it there, and then they'd be going out off-site somewhere else to serve.
So let me use Gatorback as an example. So Gatorback brings in 20 food trucks, right? They clearly wouldn't be in any of our maps of pre-approved, right? What does Gatorback have to do now to make sure that they have food? They have to come in for another special exception, because if we draw a map and he's not in it, staff can't approve it. They have to wait till we meet to approve this happening outside of the map.
We need to massage this thing if we get it to where we're not hamstringing ourselves and the staff has the ability to make that decision.
Well, I can tell you right now, staff is going to say, no, we're not making that. You guys drew the map.
I just think,
right, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just think there's thought that needs to be going into this designated areas, because somebody like Gatorback, they really have a dedicated audience. It's not really a public walk up grab food and leave kind of arrangement, like the hot dog vendor over at New to You. I mean, what if Mike Lehman is not in the designated area, but once a month for his employees, and he's got 80 or 100 of them over there, he wants to have a food truck come in and sell or have it available to his employees.
DCC,
Yeah.
selling Christmas trees, want to bring a food truck out. Do they have to ask for a special exception for that?
Yeah, I don't want to get into them having to come get a special exemption. But
I think this is food for
chew
thought.
on that. Yeah,
I think
this is
food for
this is
thought.
mobile food for thought.
Well, Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, as that specific example, DCC would get a administratively signed off on special temporary use permit for the sale of the Christmas trees, and it could be part of the same thing. Since they already actually have to get a special temporary use, an administrative special temporary use permit for the Christmas tree sales. It could be, if they want to do food trucks, it would just be the same part of the same STUP.
And this is more a question for Scott, because I think we have maybe beat this horse to death. But Scott, if you would think about, because in my mind, this is almost like saying, like we're doing an end around the state, because the whole point here is the state saying you can't say no to them. You just have to tell them how they do it. And if we draw a map and we say, then we're basically saying you do it here, and we are saying no anywhere else. So I think we just need to think, are we going to be challenged on that point later on it? And I'm not asking you to answer that question right now. That's going to take a little bit of research, but that would be your food for thought as we move forward. And this is the last slide. And everyone was in agreement with this one here, right? And I didn't see anything about park. So if it's a map idea, then we just draw it to include Lois Fort Park. Otherwise, if it's not a map idea, then what would a park fall into? If I'm having a birthday party at Lois Fort Park, I want to bring a food truck out for a birthday party.
That, Mr. Mayor, that would typically fall under the special event.
Do I have to come get a permit to have a birthday party?
If we stick with the zoning district, parks could be zoned so that they're included. But I think it's not necessarily the birthday party, because if it's the birthday party, it's going to kind of be like a wedding, where now it's not a food truck, it's a caterer. But it is fathomable that a food truck operator would say, hey, I'd like to set up at Lois Fort Park. It's perfect. And could you be there? I don't think we should allow them to be in a city park by right. I think they have to come get a request for us, and the commission can give us direction on whether they think it's appropriate for us to permit food trucks to be in park if someone applies. Someone's wanting to set up on the city's property at that point.
Same thing. Right. Yeah. And I mean, that has become sort of my mantra at the P&Z is that, hey, we can always come back with these and adopt them later. So we got to get the conversation going. So have you heard enough tonight to get us a good draft to take to the P&Z?
I think so, Mr. Mayor. We've got quite a bit. We can
Okay. Does staff have anything left that they need on this topic? If not, we're going to move to comments. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start with, I guess I want to brag on city staff for the Christmas tree lighting and Christmas tree marketing event last weekend. It was excellent. And the architect for that was Tracy Fair, who works here in customer service. She deserves a lot of credit. She deserves all the credit. Each department contributed, and it was a team effort, but Tracy was definitely the mastermind, did a great job. And it was one of the best events that we've run since I've come to the city. A reminder to the city commission that we are planning a special meeting next Monday evening. The mayor and I got together, and there's at least one item that needs to be heard before the end of the year. When we agreed not to have the second meeting in December, I clearly got direction from the commission that, hey, if something comes up, we would have that meeting. Something has come up, a question for the commission, prefer 6 or 7 p.m. Staff's neutral on that, just 7 to accommodate all commissioners.
7.
Okay. And there may be more than one item, but there's one that is absolutely critical.
And again, on that, we need 3 here in the room to have a quorum in order to be able to vote.
21st, Monday the
21st.
21st.
Yeah. So we need 3 of you to be able to be here and 2 can Zoom in as long as we have a quorum. Okay. I cannot be here, but I can Zoom in. So, but I don't vote, so I don't count. Yeah. Anything?
All right. Just one last thing. The city's holiday schedules is coming up for Christmas and for New Year's. City Hall will be open and all city offices will be open Monday through Friday, regular 10-hour days available to Monday through Wednesday, 10-hour days available to the general public both weeks. Both of those holiday weeks, City Hall will be closed on the Thursday prior to the holiday. And that concludes my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And I had the pleasure of zooming into a court case this morning, and I got to see Scott in action. And it was a pleasure to see. You did a great job representing the city of Newberry. I wanted to compliment you on that. It was good to see you in real time action. At 10 years, I've never done that before. So would ask you if you give a brief update on that hearing to the commission tonight, if you would, in your comments.
Glad to do it. The objective of an attorney is to not be there in court. That is not where we want to be, but this is one of those situations where we needed to do it in order to contest the ballot amendment that was placed on the recent vote before the Alachua County electors as to whether or not the county would have regulatory authority and land use authority over lands that are enacted or annexed to the city of Newberry if those lands fall within what is called the growth management area. So that's what this lawsuit's all about. City of Alachua, through their attorney, David Theriak, argued this morning. We argued on behalf of the city of Newberry and the city of Archer. We also argued on behalf of the city of High Springs because they voted to join the lawsuit, but they voted so late that we just couldn't make it happen for today. Today's vote or today's argument was related to count 1 of our complaint and the countervailing argument by the county and the Charter Review Commission for Alachua County as to a motion for summary judgment. So it's not a full-blown trial. It's basically a short circuit of a decision by the court to when a case is before the judge and there's no material issues of fact, and we're only talking about the law, which both sides said that that's where we're at, judge, making a certain decision as to the ballot amendment. And we contended that the ballot amendment is defective and invalid legally because it doesn't inform the voter as to what the vote is specifically all about. It's all about annexation. In no place do you find the word annexation on the ballot summary. You don't find it in the actual charter amendment either, but it's all about annexation. When we annex property, or any of the cities in Alachua County annex property to our boundaries, then this issue was which government is going to retain jurisdiction over land use amendments or land use changes regarding that property. And the charter amendment says that jurisdiction stays with the county. And that's not very clear either as a part of this. This ballot summary said, should the county maintain the ability to establish a growth management area? And that's, and our argument is very misleading to voters. So that was the subject matter of what we did and what we argued today. And there's a bunch of case law out there about that. There's one case that is going to present a problem for us. That's the Seminole County case that we talked about in front of the judge today. Factually, it's very similar to what we have in the county, in Seminole County 1 at the 5th DCA level. And so that's an area that we argued this morning. And if you take a close look at that case, we believe that the facts that you pull out after you read that case are vastly dissimilar as far as argument is concerned as to how we approach the case. And so I hope we made that distinction sufficiently for Judge Brazenton. She's a very careful judge. She's going to look at it extremely carefully. She's going to read everything that was cited to her, and she'll go through that. We have to give her our proposed final summary judgments by January 11th at 5 o'clock. So we will do that. I'm not sure if we'll have a joint proposed summary judgment or if it will be ours independent of the city of Alachua. I'll talk to David Thuriak. I did tell him, as the mayor suggested that I needed to do, or he said, tell David he did a great job. On behalf of his client, we're all in the same boat, so we try to hold the oars together, and I think we did that. So I think it was a good tag teaming, ham and egged it, however you want to call it. Well, I think we did a good job in that respect in arguing on behalf of those cities. Once that happens, the judge can rule in our favor. The judge can deny the motion altogether, can rule in the county's favor, and then we'll know which way it goes from there. If she denies it altogether, then it'll be set up for an evidentiary hearing at some point in the probably summertime of 2021. That's pretty much where we're at, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on that? It was a hard 3 hours to sit through. I wanted to jump in. You know, the county did.
County attorney through Bob Swain. And I did say to the judge that the county attorney's office was very professional. They allowed us to jump in on behalf of Newberry and Archer in an abbreviated schedule, even though the city of Alachua was ahead of us. So they did a really good job with being professional and allowing us to get the issue before the judge. And Mr. Voss, Wade Voss, is arguing he's out of Winter Park or Orlando, and he was extremely professional, allowing us to do that as well. And Mr. Voss argued in front of Judge Brazenton as well on behalf of the CRC.
But I listened to their arguments, and I would say that they did not speak to the issue today, which was, should we throw this whole thing out because the ballot language was misleading and no one could understand the ramifications. So they seem to be very, very focused on the county has the right to do this. And they kept sidestepping the question of, when I went into the ballot, did I understand that this wasn't giving the county a new power to regulate growth? Did I understand that this really nothing happened here until an annexation happened? In the Seminole County, the ballot language has the word preempt municipal rule in the title. That was not in this ballot language. And then, if the judge had asked me, I would say, I sat through many of those CRC meetings, listening to this idea. I've sat through presentations here like you guys have, and I still don't feel like I could tell you the full ramifications of what does this mean for Alachua County into the future. So I thought both you and Mr. Thuriak did an excellent job of laying out that case. And I was already on your side, so I'm certainly biased. But if I had been an objective person sitting there, I would have thought that you guys clearly won the day. So thank you for doing that, and we appreciate it.
Right.
Is that any other comments, Mr. Walker?
No? That's it. Merry Christmas to everybody. Nice
Absolutely.
To be back in person.
It is nice to have you back in person. Madam Clerk, do you have any comments?
I don't have anything, thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. That takes us to the commission. We'll start down here. Commissioner Norfleet, you got any comments? Mr. Coleman? No. Commissioner Farnsworth? No. Commissioner Martin? Commissioner Clark? All right.
We spoke a while back about getting sidewalks
Clean.
I have not heard anything else, and I know me and Mike talked about it, but even though the night when we had our Christmas thing, it was getting damp, on that side is worse than the other, but I was wondering, would everybody want to do this downtown thing, is there a possibility?
I thought I saw DCC pressure washing the sidewalks in their service.
Correct. As part of their November service month, DCC pressure washed.
Yeah. Well, I don't know they're doing
the sidewalks west of the railroad track.
I saw them go to 1906 and about that far on this side too.
During these misty rains and you get
Yeah.
stuff.
That mildew gets a little
Downtown's clean.
slimy.
Thanks, Mike, if that's
And
done already, thank you.
it has, and Pastor McKinley indicated that they're going to try to work that into some sort of a regular scheduled thing. I think, now they've got a better handle on what it entails. One of the things we need to do is provide a water source everywhere. We struggled with that. They decided to do it like on 2 days' notice, and it was difficult for us to find them access to a water tap that they could use for pressure washing. But it's gone good so far, and it was a big help by DCC.
Commissioner Martin?
I think it was a couple of years ago, I had put up those flag holders on either side of that crosswalk downtown. I noticed in the period while the business was closed, they got taken or just disappeared. Can we buy a couple and get those put back in there? I felt like they helped.
Mr. Mayor, we absolutely will. I would tell you that Commissioner Norfleet asked us to look at something more extensive. That's been a very recurring message. I got an email late this afternoon from someone who's a traffic engineer that recommended we do it. My request to him orally is going to be, or do you somehow get a kickback, because his address is Orlando. But DOT has reviewed it. It's still in their court, but their folks have discouraged us from getting the strobe lights because the guy that's evaluating has told me on a couple of occasions that, hey, this strobe is pretty extreme, and it's extreme for your downtown setting. I'm not sure that's what you want. But with the number of requests we get, maybe at our special meeting or January 11 meeting, we'll do a little more presentation and ask the commission, if you want the strobes, DOT would do them. They've just discouraged us from thinking that way because they think it'd be too disruptive from our downtown atmosphere.
I mean, I really think I was driving there the other night, and it seems like the street lights that are there, we just need to up the wattage of the bulbs because they're pretty dim. I mean, it's lit, but it's not very well lit. And on that side, it's really darker, So, I mean, I would start with that, and let's see what.
And as part of the Twin Pairs project, we need more. We need more crosswalks, because I've also got a request into DOT to put one at Seaboard Coastline Drive, and they've been resistant because it's so close. I've got one a crosswalk at Joel's Coffee House, and there's clearly a need for one right here at 255th, because that's the one that goes down to the schools where the school crossing guard is. So I think that part of the Twin Pairs project is we're going to have multiple downtown safe crosswalk areas, and it's just part of building a more vibrant, walkable downtown that you would need that.
All right. Anything else? No? I have a few here. I'll try to move through them quickly. I want to thank the Newberry RC Park. If you haven't been out there to visit the RC Park, you should go check it out. They've done a great job of taking care of that facility that's behind Easton. This weekend they had something called, I think it was Winterfest, and they donated $250 to Toys for Tots, and they donated $250 to the high school to buy Christmas hams for the families that were adopted. So they're really successful to the point now that where they're beginning to give back. And so I just wanted to say thank you and let you guys know next time they're having an event. If you haven't seen those little cars whiz around, it's worth checking out because they're serious. they go fast. I wanted to piggyback off of Mike's. I want to thank Tracy and all of the city staff. If you didn't get down here to see the Christmas tree lighting, it really was a great night. We had the festival going on down there. You had the tree lighting ceremony. Main Street had the art. It was all over. We had folks, and a couple stopped me, and they said, we want to thank you, one, for having a holiday event. We came up here all the way from the city of Tampa because it's been on my wife's bucket list to see real live reindeer. And so we drove all the way up from Tampa. We stayed here. It was amazing. She stayed there at those live reindeer for probably about an hour and a half. I talked to them. I went back, I came back. They were there, talked to them again. But their thanks and gratitude was profuse to the city of Newberry for doing that. And it really was a wonderful night. The Legion, American Legion, would like to thank the city and in particular Travis Parker. If you didn't get a chance over Halloween to do their drive-through haunted, I'm not sure how, but we somehow really helped facilitate that, and Travis was instrumental in helping them figure out how to get it done. And so they presented me with a couple of certificates that I forgot to bring in to show you, but I will certainly make sure that they make their way to Mr. New's desk to pass along. The Christmas parade in Newberry is this Saturday, December 19th. Begins at 5:30 p.m. And it's going to take its same route heading west down Newberry Road. The theme this year is Bells of Christmas. So this is going to be the first one since I've been here that I'm going to miss. But if you guys are going to be there and you need a vehicle, can we figure out a fire truck or something to hop on and ride with? Not the one that breaks down all the time. The grand marshals are going to be the teachers from all three schools. So they're celebrating the teachers and what they're doing. And then after the parade, the entire town is invited down for a festival and Santa at Countryway Town Center, the town square. So if you haven't been to Christmas on the Square, I'm not saying it's a phrase, Christmas on the Square. If you haven't been to that, you really should go. That's like walking right into a Hallmark movie also. So check that out and participate in that. So parade at 9:30, or I'm sorry, 5:30 on the 19th, and then head right over there to see Santa. My last comment, I missed the earlier meeting because I was making a presentation to the city of Archer about why Newberry and Archer should work together on a wastewater treatment facility. We haven't come to any agreement, but they did agree to enter into conversations with us. And I think that's the most important first step. I think if we can get their manager with our manager around a table, we can work out and discover a solution that's going to be beneficial to us and beneficial to them. So they have agreed to have a series of meetings with Mr. New, their staff and our staff to see what can be done. And then if we can come to something that's mutually beneficial, then they'll bring, Mr. New will bring that proposal to our board for approval. Mr. Hammond will bring the proposal to their board for approval. And if we can get a sewer line between us and Newberry, we can have some north-south growth and development instead of all east-west. So I think this would be, especially in light of the GMA, the growth management area, I think we have to start working together this way much better. And they agreed with that assertion tonight. So I wanted to let you guys know we potentially will have something exciting. I did tell them our timeline. We got about 5 months before we're going to be too far down the process in our engineering. So if we're going to have these conversations, we need to have them now to see if we want to change direction before we've gotten too far down our path. Okay. Various things that, they have been searching, and Scott could probably speak to it better than I, for an answer to their wastewater system for 10 years, if not longer, maybe 20. Well, not enough money. So they've had a lot of different people help, but they can't quite get enough. And remember, Archer's 900 people. So it's hard to run. Think about our struggles with wastewater with a city of 6,800. Imagine if we only had 900 customers, and not all 900 people are on those customers. So without getting too much into their history, can you answer the commissioner's question better?
That's exactly right. They purchased some property called the Equigen property through grant funding, and it was in the county, not contiguous to the city of Archer. There's no clear path to get it annexed into the city, and the surrounding residents did not like the idea of a wastewater treatment plant, even though it was going to be an advanced wastewater treatment plant, being in that section of the county, and raised a great deal of objection to it to the county commissioners, which waylaid the implementation because all their engineering and everything was directed toward that particular facility. So now they've swapped that property out for property in the city, and it's north of the city, and there's been some problems with getting that completed, but the land transfer has occurred. In order to make that happen, the next problem is going, as the mayor was just relating, there's a sweet spot there as to the monthly charges that go to your citizenry for the implementation of a wastewater treatment plant. And if it's too expensive, Mike could talk about this probably all day long. If it's too expensive, the monthly charge is really problematic, and it's hard to get funding for that sort of thing. So what Mayor Marlowe is talking about is really makes a great deal of sense. And I think our local legislative delegation is going to get very interested in the idea of a regional wastewater treatment, advanced wastewater treatment on a regional basis. By the way, High Springs is at a point where development is going to get curtailed because they have to expand their wastewater treatment plant. So this issue for us, High Springs and Archer, is front and center on the table. And I think there's going to be state funding that could possibly make it economical for our residents on the western side of this county. I have no idea where the city of Alachua is at in this, but 3 cities have very similar needs all at the same time. And there's something that could be done. And you have a local legislative delegation that's very interested in making something happen as well. So we're in a very unique time right now.
It potentially could be very exciting for us and for Western Alachua County, because this could change a lot of our development projections about which way we're headed. So,
Any talk about doing the same thing with High Springs?
I haven't presented to them yet. I think Archer is ready to look for partners. I'm not sure High Springs is quite ready to look.
Their brand new city
for partners.
manager, I've talked to her about it. And she comes from places in Texas where this is a general discussion. She's very open to the idea, Mr. Mayor.
But our local delegate is meeting tomorrow morning at 10:30. So we will, we'll make sure we get a word in about where Newberry is perfectly poised to help facilitate this project. If you haven't noticed the slide up, I looked at Facebook postings all night long on when we lit up the Christmas tree, and they were very, very similar to this. So once again, just kudos to everyone. And there was something else that I was supposed to, that was a good news thing that slipped my brain. So I'll end it there and open the floor for Mr. New.
Mr. Mayor, I have one more announcement that I think it's important for the commission. Our contractor that is constructing or reconstructing lift station number 1 has requested the authorization to shut down the intersection at Southwest 255th and 2nd Avenue the week of Christmas. So school will be out, and we've concurred with that. So we'll be setting up detours for local residents that need to find their way. But I want the commission to be aware of that, because it's likely to get at least some traction and conversation within the city. We'll also do social media and our 911 rollout, all those sorts of things to try to make sure we communicate that to our public.
Can we make sure those notifications go out with a couple of days for people to percolate, not just at 7 o'clock the morning of?
Can we do that? Yes, Mr. Mayor, we'll do that.
Okay. Public comment? Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the evening of tonight's regularly scheduled meeting. If you'd like to call in and make a comment to the commission, we've set aside a 5-minute comment period at the end of the night. All you need to do to be able to accomplish that is dial the phone number on your screen. That'll get you into the meeting. Once you're in the meeting, simply look at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a little hand signal. Click that hand symbol. That'll let us know you'd like to make a comment. We'll make sure you have the opportunity to do so. Once again, we have about a 30-second delay between our live feed and the feed here in City Hall. So we're about 10 seconds left of listening to me talk before we make sure we've given everyone the opportunity to talk to us. And there's 30 seconds. Dallas, do we have anyone with a hand raised? Hearing no public comment.